18th. As this is a work session, we'll move right into the business for this evening. First item we have is the FY 2019 Curb Rehabilitation Program. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, Your Honor, and I will turn it over to Mr. Crass.
Thank you, Mr. Fearborn, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. When council recently awarded the contract for the curb replacement project, if you recall, I explained that when we prepare the bid documents, we use an average of the bid pricing that we receive. So we're kind of conservative with the amount of bid curb that we put out for bid. We received very good bids from Terry Snelling once again, and that his contract amount was $384,000, which left us about $200,000 in the budget. I have submitted to you this evening kind of a map that shows the additional segments that we are recommending that be added to the program. The original segments that council approved are shown in yellow, and the additional segments we're going to be working on are shown in orange. And with that concludes my staff report. I am available for any questions.
Thanks. I think you also have outlined in here those streets as well. Does anyone have any questions of Mr. Crass with regard to that? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
One quick question. Do you have a couple of the homeowner association presidents were curious about the Metal Art Drive. You have a timeline on when we'll be, that one in particular, but if you just had a general timeline when you'll be starting?
I believe work will be starting shortly. The rains, although they're gone, have delayed everyone. We're hearing paving companies are 3 to 4 weeks out. We will certainly be putting out door hangers and using all of our communication outlets once work starts.
And is it I don't want to assume that this is depicting the full both sides of the street.
No, not necessarily.
Okay, I didn't think so. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman.
Mr. Crass, I'm assuming that we just took these from the priority list and moved them up based on available funds. Is that a correct assumption?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Mike. It went fairly quickly there.
And we need them to tonight, sir.
Yeah.
The second item on the agenda for the trail lighting, as we continue to move, again with the rain, slower than we would like at Hawk Ridge Park, getting towards the completion, one of the last items that occurred to us was they have now installed the full boardwalk up there. And one of the items that occurred to us is that boardwalk is not lit. So we have a quote to get the boardwalk lit from Black & McDonald of $87,678.36, which will put us over budget on Hawk Ridge Park by $87,678.36, which tells you exactly where we're at right now. We're at the 0 point. We want to see what the council's temperature is on lighting that segment of trail with the $100,000 that was set aside for trail lighting in general. So we've also gotten a quote to tell you how much trail lighting is going to cost, just to kind of give you a figure, because now we have a hard number. To go from, if you were to do this and then go from the southern terminus of the boardwalk there, hook around the lake on the trail to connect up with Johnson, that's an additional amount that is equal to the, so that length is approximately $100,000 for each length that you're going to do that on a trail where there's, and that particular section of trail actually has electrical to it. So it might be a little bit more for that kind of a distance as we move forward. But we wanted to see what the council's temperature was to use this particular one to light that boardwalk over the water. That includes staff report on this item, sir.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question on the lighting. I was thinking about with the amphitheater there, if we had pole lighting, there would be times if we had a performance that we would not want that to be on. But if we were to do some kind of lighting where it was underneath the rails, LED lighting that goes just down onto the boardwalk but doesn't shoot everywhere in a blinding fashion, where you could see where you're walking, but yet it wouldn't interfere with anything else that was going on, including maybe people's view from the other side. Is that a consideration, or?
These actually turn on and off.
Okay,
But for just that reason. And there may be times where we want to leave them on for the, I can't believe I'm going to say this word, for the ambiance, because you'll remember there's a steel backing to the stage that shuts so you can't see through it.
okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Holman?
I'm in support of taking that money and adding the lighting to that section of the trail, simply because it has the unique quality of being suspended over water. And God forbid we should have someone fall in, especially a small child or elderly person. The police are going to want, for search and rescue purposes, if they're not able to take that somebody out of the water quickly, you're going to want all the lighting that you can get in case there were an emergency there to be able to see what's going on. So I think this is a good move with that money to light that trail, that section of the trail.
Anyone else? Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you. And I'll just add to what Mr. Holman said. I think when we discussed this and set this money aside, the purpose was for safety. We were responding to some concerns from citizens that they weren't feeling safe on the trails at night. And because of some instances that happened in surrounding communities, we thought lighting the trails might help keep our people safe and help them feel more safe. And I think a trail over water definitely would be more safe with lighting. So this seems to be in line with what we hoped for with this money. I hope the council will consider adding more money to this fund in the future so that we can use it for the intended purpose on the trails that are more secluded eventually. But I think this makes sense for right now.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fearborn, I also think I would support this as well. Once we do this, if we approve lighting for this section, I'm assuming that there's probably going to be a greater call to light the rest of the trail soon down the road. What would be the cost to light the entire trail system around that lake? You mentioned the $100,000 to bring it to that one trailhead, but to do the entire rest of that trail, do we have a ballpark figure?
Well,
From the hip.
I would say that if it's $100,000 to get from the southern terminus of this around to the Johnson Drive side, you'd probably have 4 more sections like that to get around the lake. You'd probably be looking at $500,000 to $600,000, sir.
Okay. Is that something the park board has looked at, or?
I think that they're planning on funding that up next year. The park board has definitely looked at lighting the trails just in general, at least trailheads, et cetera.
Yeah.
And what the baby step to doing that would be where the trails are meeting parking lots.
Yeah.
You know, that would seem to be a logical start for those.
Okay. I think there are some safety concerns with lighting certain trails, but if we did have to light a trail, I think this probably be a better choice than Rec Park. So I would be in support of this. Thank you.
Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I would just concur with my colleagues. I would support this as well. Twofold from the safety standpoint, and it'll also give us, like Councilman Berenson said, to see how palpable it is. You know, we light that section, and maybe they look at it and go, yeah, we want the rest lighted, and maybe they don't. Maybe that's enough lighting, but at least we've got something we can look at, and from a safety standpoint, I think it's really a must. So I appreciate everybody supporting it so far.
Mr. Sarko?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just kind of bring in on what they've said, the other council members. Safety comes first, especially in the parks, and we have heard of things over the years of different other areas, and we want to make sure we are the safest. So I'm all for lighting those ways for the safety of the people. We need to keep them safe, and if we ever down the road can light up more trails would be nice. But I know we do utilize the trails in the city quite a bit, so I'm all for it. Yes, I agree.
I think from the comments here this evening, you have a consensus on that, so
Yes, sir.
we wish to proceed forward. Is there any other comments about trail lighting at this point? If not, yes, Mr. Jacobson.
I just want to go forward saying, yes, I'm all for trail lighting. Not having been here when this was originally budgeted, I was just checking with my colleague here to make sure that it hadn't already been earmarked for lighting somewhere, and that we were now pulling lights off somewhere and putting this in. It sounds like, if I understand correctly, this is a budget for trail lighting, and we're not saying, okay, we originally planned to put lights in over here, but now we're not going to do that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. With that in mind, then yes, I'm absolutely for this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. Fearborn, anything other on the agenda for the work session?
No, sir.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and, yep, Mr. Barber. Mr. Belgawad.
Sorry.
Whoever's up there, who's got their hands up?
I think
saw a
they
bunch
were
of hand waving
getting your
going on.
attention for me. Thank you, guys. If you don't mind, can we back up to point A on the agenda? I was looking up an email because I wanted to report accurate information, the curbs.
Oh, sure,
I just have a quick question on that,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
go ahead.
A few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I sent an email to Mr. Fearborn about the curbs on Lark Street. And I'm happy to see in the curb project that we're adding Oak. I know the people in Ward 4 will be happy about that. I was just curious why. I'm going to guess it's because Lark's not as bad as some of the others, but if you wouldn't mind speaking to why we didn't choose Lark Street or some of those curbs in Skyview Estates.
Well, I think when we did our overall survey, Oak Street in that general area was, excuse me, the next one in line. Lark is certainly a candidate and will likely be on next year's program. As council's aware, at any given time within the city, there's over 200,000 feet of curb that's in need of replacement. We, especially with the new full block replacement, we're looking at around 15,000 feet that we can replace every year with the amount that's budgeted.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask that question so that we could share a little more information, because I know lots of times people look out their doors and see their curb crumbling and want to know why theirs aren't considered. So thank you. Thank you for answering the question.
Anyone else? If there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close this meeting, and we'll take about a 17-minute recess before we start our special session. City Council special meeting for Tuesday, June the 17th. I'll call the meeting to order and ask for the roll call.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Barber.
Present.
Councilmember Berenson.
Present.
Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Circo.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Jacobson.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Would you all please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll roll right into new business, and we'll go with item A is the award of contract for the residential waste collection. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3465 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3465 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Constable Sanitation to provide waste disposal services for the City of Raymore in accordance with the request for proposal submitted for RFP 19-006.
And I would ask, does this require a public hearing?
It does not, sir.
Okay. And I'll ask for a staff report.
Thanks, sir. I would like to begin my staff report by introducing to my right Mr. George Constable, who is the owner of Constable Sanitation, and Shannon Edgman, who is the account manager by title for the same. We thought we'd have them sit up here with staff because of the length of the presentation and didn't want them to have to stand for a lengthy period of time at the podium, kind of doing the Sonny and Cher thing up there. So we have them sit with us here this evening. Staff report. In May, the City Council voted to cancel the current solid waste contract with Jim's Disposal. The final effective day of that contract is going to be Sunday, July 14th. On that action by the City Council, staff immediately issued request for proposal 19-006 to provide citywide solid waste recycling and yard waste pickup, along with bulky item pickup and special pickups for the city. 7 companies requested information regarding the RFP and attended the mandatory pre-bid meetings. 4 of these 7 companies submitted proposals to us. All 4 of the submitted proposals were deemed to be qualified, meaning that all had the required elements within the proposal to be included. The request for proposal itself was changed in a number of ways from the 2017 RFP that we had put out because of the direction of the industry as a whole, input from the various haulers to us during that same period of time as to what they would and would not consider when they issued a submittal in the future, and what the city was actually experiencing in the submittals in 2017. Those changes include: the previous RFP included solid waste and recycling as one bid item to be bid, and yard waste as a separate item, line item to be bid within that RFP. With the dramatic change in the recycling programs in the nation and in the world, and with the input from all of the haulers, it was determined that the better way to structure that would be to have solid waste and yard waste included as a base bid, and if people wish to continue to recycle, there would be a premium charge for them to continue to do this. Second item of change: all the submittals in 2017, with the exception of Jim's Disposal, required solid waste and recycling to be in a cart. During the period from 2017 until this submittal was released, that type of program became even more prevalent, and therefore the RFP stated that residents would be required to place items in a cart, and also asked if there would be an additional tipping charge for the carts beyond the first one in the category. Another change: we had heard from many of the haulers that they would be submitting proposals for yard waste that limited the amount, as opposed to our current unlimited bundles and bags. We also heard from the haulers that going to year-round was actually better, as it would even out the flow of the yard waste and keep them from getting overwhelmed in the spring. The new RFP indicated that the city would be open to limits on the amount of yard waste that could be placed at the curb. The city included a single free bulky item pickup per month to be picked up as a requirement of the program, and indicated that more than one bulky item would be considered a special pickup to be billed directly to the customer by the hauler. This was a return to the original RFP that we put out that had changed in the interim RFP in 2017. Of all of the submittals received in 2017, only the current carrier that we have now was willing to pick up on holidays. All the other carriers indicated that they wanted 6 holidays and trash would be pushed back one day from the normal pickup if the holiday fell on a pickup day. This RFP included that language rather than the language indicating that pickup would be required on holidays. Probably the most significant change from a global aspect, from a city global aspect in this RFP, was the input that we received from every single hauler that the city needed to increase the ability for the haulers to pick up over a larger number of days during the week in order to shorten time in the city, limit the number of houses being addressed on any given day, and make the pickup day more of a success for the hauler and our customer and the customer. Of course, another significant change in this RFP was the fact that the haulers were no longer responsible for the carts or the cart delivery at the beginning of the contract. The RFP listed the type of cart, make and model, and number of carts that the city would be purchasing and own in order to make certain that those submitting a response knew the type of cart that they would be picking up and what they were going to be getting into with those. We had spent a great deal of time on this process long before the RFP was actually issued, and went out in preparation for a future RFP and had asked many of the haulers what their preferred cart would be, and this was the cart ultimately purchased by the city, and we have since heard from all the haulers that that was the best cart to pick. The following 4 submittals were then received by the city. Constable, $12.95 per residence per month for the base bid of yard waste and solid waste. A premium bid of $5.20 per residence per month for the recycling. Casey Disposal, $12.17 per residence per month for the base bid, $2.80 per resident per month for the recycling. WCA, $13.35 per resident per month for the base bid, $4.75 per resident per month for the recycling premium. Republic Services, $17.75 per resident per month for the base bid, and for the recycling premium, $8.50 per resident per month. It should be noted that Republic Service reserved the right as a requirement, if we accepted their bid, to be able to review their recycling price every quarter and adjust accordingly, according to what costs that they were receiving. Casey Disposal and WCA asked during the pre-bid process if there would be any way the city would consider, and they put it as wording within their proposal, if the city would consider, if there was a price increase in the recycling, if we would entertain a mid-year contract change to reflect those increases. Staff interviewed Constable, Casey Disposal, and WCA following the submittal of the bids. Staff is recommending award of this contract to Constable Sanitation. Mr. Icky will be going into the details of the elements of the program that would be in place if the council accepts this recommendation. We have had 3 lengthy interviews with George and Shannon to get the details of their proposal clear and to make sure that we all share a common expectation for the level of service and the partnership that would exist between us. We have discussed their financing ability for the capital assets and titled assets that they are going to need to be bringing on. We have questioned them on their business plan. We have reviewed all of their references, interviewed all of their references, and received several written responses in addition to that. The written responses included in your packet are reflected in what we heard in our telephone interviews as well. 9s and 10s on a 10-point scale. We have pulled their Dun & Bradstreet rating in every single category is either very low risk or low risk. Immediately after being notified that they would be the company being recommended, they responded very quickly, proactively, and with a measured plan. At 7:14 the next morning, Mr. Icky and I actually received an email from Shannon, both asking questions on what they needed to do and giving us direction on what they needed. It's kind of like having a general all of a sudden coming out of the chute, and it was obvious that they were going to try to get their business plan in order for this as quickly as the city needed. While they are not the lowest in cost, the request for proposal process looks at cost as a primary item, certainly, but also takes into account the large number of services and types of services that are required with a program of this magnitude. The items that set them apart in these categories and leading to this recommendation on our behalf include solid waste. They were the only vendor to propose that extra carts would be tipped at no additional charge to the city. They also proposed that on any given pickup day, residents could set up to 4 bags alongside their solid waste cart or carts, and those would be picked up as well. They also made note of the realization that Christmas time and the holidays lead to more being put out as an unusual situation, and indicated that on those holidays, they would still pick up items that are not in the cart. Recycling, they were willing to pick up unlimited recycling as long as it was placed in a cart with no additional tipping charge. Yard waste, they were the only vendor to propose unlimited yard waste as long as it is in bags or bundled according to the current rules. Yard waste will be picked up year-round. Bulky item, they were the only hauler to indicate that residents don't have to call in and make an appointment even for the free bulky item per month. They just simply, as you read in the tabulation, the bulky items are to be placed out on the first pickup day of the month. As far as staffing is concerned, they spent a great deal of time, and I know some of you have noted this as well, talking with Mr. Icky and myself about their very real belief and commitment to paying their people a living just wage. Pickup schedule. They provided the most detailed pickup schedule the city has ever received from any of the vendors, with obvious background work and consideration having gone into the plan, which included the approximate number of homes in each of the zones that would be picked up each day. While they stretched into a 5-day pickup schedule, it was clearly with a plan in mind. Customer service. They already have provided their office manager, Ms. Taylor Moore, to actually house in the city hall in the office next to mine during the entirety of the implementation of the contract in order to field direct phone calls from residents and handle the call overload until it subsides. They will then be providing a full-time Raymore dedicated only employee at their facility for Raymore only phone calls. At this point in time, I would turn it over to Mr. Icky to provide the council with the details of what the program would look like if the council accepts this recommendation. Mr. Icky.
Thank you,
And Mike,
sir.
before you get started, just as a correction, Jim, everything you said is what you've briefed me on, with the exception of one thing with regard to bulky items. I know that in our packet, it reads, and it's very short, it reads, residents can place one bulky item at the curb the first trash day of each month for free. Additional bulky items can be scheduled for pickup for a fee. See the attached fee schedule for specific items. I think as you were reading there, I got the impression that bulky items were good to go no matter how many, but it is one bulky item per month, the first of the month, any additional for a fee, and can be relayed as such.
Yeah, they don't have to call in if they have their one free bulky item per month.
Right.
Is how I read it.
Okay. I actually got it as more than that, but I just if I misunderstood it, maybe somebody else did, and so I wanted to clear that up.
Excellent, sir.
Anyway, sorry, Mr. Icky, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. There are a number of items I wanted to cover tonight, and I know there will be a lot to unpack, so feel free to stop me with questions at any time. We're going to be covering a number of things. The first thing I wanted to jump into, and I may start to sound a bit like a broken record when I say this, all of the information that we're sharing tonight and all of the details about the proposed trash contract and the proposal can all be found on our website at raymore.com. Everything will have a link on the homepage, but if you also go to raymore.com/trash, there you're going to find specific updates and details throughout this process, as well as when we start the contract if council approves. The first thing I want to talk about was the trash carts. Although it is not part of this specific proposal, it is one of the first steps that our residents have seen as they've been delivering those carts throughout this past week. As of Friday, I received an update that roughly 7,500 of the 16,000 trash and recycling carts that we have delivered or being delivered to residents have been delivered. If a resident had ordered a smaller trash cart a year and a half ago through Jim's Disposal, that resident will be receiving a smaller trash cart through our crew, so they'll be receiving a smaller Raymore trash cart. If they had not ordered and just received a default trash cart through Jim's Disposal, they'll be receiving the default 96-gallon trash cart and a 65-gallon recycling cart. So those will be the default sizes. If residents do wish to have a smaller trash cart or a solid waste cart, we will be making those swaps, and we welcome residents to call City Hall to make sure that we get their name and address down. However, because we have a crew specifically in town making those deliveries, we won't be able to make the swaps to the smaller trash carts until after the 1st of July. And so we ask that residents be patient with us as we take this information down and move forward with the rest of the delivery program. Within the marketing or within the proposal from Constable Sanitation, I really do have to applaud their thoroughness and in-depth marketing and communications plan that came along with the overall proposal as well. Before the contract even begins, before we even begin to execute the contract, if council approves, we've already begun discussions of a mailer that would be going out from Constable Sanitation that would introduce all of our residents who receive solid waste service to Constable Sanitation. And then also, as it was announced to me tonight, to have that dedicated phone line for Raymore only phone calls. So this postcard will include a lot of information from Constable that'll be going out to all of the residents that receive trash service here in the next couple of weeks. This will go on top of our regular communication avenues, which will include information on our website, raymore.com/trash, the regular weekly report, Facebook, Twitter, and much more. We have a number of venues that we can reach out to residents, and I believe many received the automated phone call through our Everbridge system. There's another venue that we can continue to use as we move forward with some of the logistics of this contract. Staff will also be posting yard signs at the entrances of neighborhoods announcing the new trash days for several areas that'll need to move to a new day. Here in the next couple weeks, those signs will be posted at those entrances. Again, we just want to make sure that we can allow residents the greatest amount of touches of information so they can see the yard signs. And again, all this information will be on our website. As part of Constable's proposal, as Mr. Fearborn had mentioned, George Constable has already developed an in-depth understanding of what routes will be required to provide service to our growing community. We'll host this map on our website so that residents can click on the map, type in their address, and will be able to instantly find what trash day they will have. That map isn't currently up, but I believe there was a paper copy placed at the dais for you this evening. Again, once a resident can go to the website, just type in their address. We make it very simple to find which zone that our residents will be living in. This will be important. The rationale behind each of these different days is included in the proposal. It's located on page 55 of your council packet, and it provides a lot of great insight into the research already done by Constable prior to working with the city. And you're going to hear me say this a lot, that the amount of research that both George and Shannon have done before even coming to the city has been fantastic. Mr. Fearborn also mentioned Taylor Moore, their office manager, who will be providing support for our utility clerks. Our IT department has already established a dedicated trash or solid waste and trash line, so when residents call the city, typically when a resident called the main line, they would be given an option of selecting utility billing or the utility office. Now as residents call in, they'll be given the option of pressing 2 to get to the utility office, but then also if they have a specific trash question, that will ring directly to Ms. Taylor, who will be able to answer those questions, not only on behalf of Constable, but also will be able to provide the logistics and information that we are putting together to provide to our residents. And this is really great in two ways. One, it allows us to learn more about Constable Sanitation and their communication strategy moving forward, but it also allows Constable to learn about our procedures and how we've been receiving phone calls, questions, and concerns from residents, and how to best handle those as we hand those off. So if a missed call or a missed pickup comes in after they begin picking up trash, we're going to be able to get that to them as quickly and efficiently as possible, and that pickup is going to be able to happen again as quickly and efficiently as possible. Ms. Taylor will be with us for the next couple of weeks before the execution of the contract. Her goal will be to train the new person who will be dedicated to Raymore taking phone calls. So as soon as they begin the contract on July 15th, if council approves, this new person will step into her role, will be housed here again at City Hall so that we can continue the learning process. And then as that call volume begins to subside and we start to get into a better kind of a expectation each week of how many calls are going to be coming in. She would then be returning to Constable at their home office to answer that dedicated phone line at their office. After the contract, or after the award, or the beginning of the contract after July 15th, both Shannon and George have already committed to visiting the various HOAs and POAs within Raymore to continue to answer questions, to introduce themselves and the company to the community. Constable has also dedicated, or will be dedicating, a website to Raymore with a number of logistical information pieces, as well as how to schedule a bulky item pickup online, also with more of the routing information and pickup day information. What I thought was impressive and what we'll be looking forward to is they'll also be hosting a customer satisfaction survey that they will be inviting residents to partake in every 6 months, I believe. What was nice is, as we've been having some of these conversations, one of the things that both George and Shannon said to me was the best way for them to get a clear view of what's happening on the ground is to hear directly from the residents. And so to be able to have that customer satisfaction survey on their website, accessible by our residents, will be a great step in ensuring that they're hearing directly from our residents about things that are going on. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about what residents will be seeing on their monthly utility bill. The plan as proposed comes with a number of additional options that residents did not have with prior vendors. Depending on the different options, residents may see a different cost for solid waste services than what their neighbor pays on a monthly basis. To outline what will be available, residents can select options where they will have only trash pickup, a trash with multiple carts pickup, a trash and recycling pickup, or a trash and recycling with multiple carts pickup. And I want to break down what each of these mean and what the different pricing structures will look like, because each of them kind of bring a different element to that area. If a resident were to select trash only, they would be paying the base rate of $12.95 plus the $1.50 for the carts themselves. That means their bill would be $14.45 a month. If a resident were to select trash only but swapped out their trash cart with swap their recycling cart with a trash cart, so they'd have 2 trash carts at the curb, that price would remain exactly the same at $14.45. If a resident were to select the trash and recycling option, they would pay the base rate of $12.95 plus the recycling rate of $5.20 plus the $1.50 for carts, for a total of $19.65 for the total on the monthly bill. For each additional cart, and as Mr. Fearborn had mentioned, there is no additional tipping fee as some of the other haulers had provided in their proposals, but for each additional cart that a resident would like to request, there will be an additional 75 cents added to that monthly utility bill. So with the no tipping fees, a resident may see their bill go from anywhere of $14.45 to $19.65 or possibly higher, depending on the number of carts they set at the curb. And at the same time, residents are still able to place 4 bags outside of the cart and haul volume in high volume trash periods such as the holiday, where a resident may not necessarily need a cart year round. That concludes my staff report, and if there are any other questions about those individual elements, I'd be happy to answer.
Before we open it up for questions, I wanted to kind of set the record straight. We are delivering a solid waste cart and a recycle cart. And so after the period of time where people can either order additional carts or different size carts, that's when the recycle cart would be picked up, should they choose to opt out?
If residents wish to opt out of the recycling program, they can call us now, and we can come pick those carts up now. It's the swapping of the one trash cart for the smaller trash cart that will have to wait until after July 1st.
Okay. Yep. All right. Thank you. And I'll open it up for questions. Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Icky, so let's say, for example, I get my trash cart and my recycling cart, and I choose not to call the city, or let's say I do call the city and I don't do the recycling. Will there be issues picking up those carts, or what if somebody doesn't want to turn the cart in? Do we foresee any problems with going back and now collecting those carts when people don't want or need them?
Our experience thus far, and this includes the transition a year and a half ago, is that if someone does not want a cart, they are very quick to let us know.
Okay.
And really, the quicker we can get out there to pick up that cart to provide not only the better customer service, but also to just be responsive to that request. We've not really run into any issues of residents withholding those carts then.
And if I could dovetail off of that, sir, if the resident didn't contact us but didn't want recycling, we have no way to know that. The way we trigger and take the recycling off of their bill is we go out and we pick up the cart.
Okay, so it's good to note that the default status is everybody's going to get trash plus recycling unless they indicate otherwise. All right, thank you.
Mr. Barber. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, recycling seems to be the biggest question mark. Obviously, it's changed, and it is changing. And my question is, as being on the council and as a person that is contemplating either recycling or not, how much is it going to change in the future? How much are we going to be able to recycle? And, you know, am I going to have a 65-gallon container and have, you know, 3 aluminum cans in it and a, you know, plastic bottle?
The first erosion in recycling service that we are seeing, and you've all read about it, you open up just about any magazine of any type these days and they talk about it, is the situation began with China refusing to accept paper products and cardboard products, and that continues to this day. I would say the next bit of the changing landscape in recycling would be, at some point in time, no recycling all the recycling centers go to saying we're not going to take paper products, in which case we take those off the recycling list, and the shift is those become solid waste in essence. George, would you have anything different than that?
Yes. First, I want to thank you for having me here tonight, and hopefully I can help answer any of your questions. On the recycling side, the last conference I attended, the kind of the ongoing recycling update was that several of the companies that were involved in Chinese recycling, where the recycling was getting shipped, have started to build paper mills and some other other buildings and processes over here in America. So that should be a couple years out. We're hoping that the recycling market has peaked as far as single stream, but as items change, really we feel like it's necessary to change it at the front end of the consumer process. If paper all of a sudden becomes less value for recycling, then when you're at the store and you need to educate the consumer, maybe you should go aluminum, because all these items have different packaging to begin with, and really try to target those items that have higher recyclable value.
Go ahead. And this is kind of in the weeds questions, but I know I got some recycling rejected because I didn't use a blue bag. And is that going to be a requirement?
No, the service will be automated with the cart, so there's not really that guy that's on the back going through each item. Our main focus will be on education before it goes into the cart.
Anyone else? Mr. Circo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I was reading this earlier, unless I'm mistaken, of course, we'll supply the carts, but did it not have somewhere in there that people can use their own carts, their own trash containers, I mean?
Yes, you can use your own trash container.
Okay, my question would be, of course, ours are guaranteed and warranted. If they choose their own and something that gets damaged, or they, I imagine, be on their own, it's their car, I mean, their trash, I don't want them to come back. I didn't know how that would work.
The problem that we have experienced in the past is somebody sets out up to and including the Rarig carts that Jim's Disposal bought, that if they set out an inferior cart, they run the risk of those arms damaging it.
Okay.
We can guarantee our carts. We can't guarantee the other ones.
Well, I want to make a point.
Strongly recommend that folks use these carts.
That's what I figured. I just want to make sure we made that point to the people. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, George, for coming in tonight and sitting with us, and thank you, staff, for the excellent report. I think some of the questions that I had, you answered for me in the staff report, so that was good. along the lines that Mr. Circo had brought up, I just need to clarify between contract and a proposal in the agenda, because as I read through also like residential containers, and then in the, I guess, the constable's proposed section, I guess, is this the proposal part of the, or is this part of the contract? Because when I look at the trash disposal section, it speaks to there will be a $2 per month tipping fee for an additional 96-gallon cart. But I heard tonight there is no additional tipping fee. So just trying to clarify between what the public has the ability to see based on what we're going to be posting on the website and what's the contract.
There is no additional tipping fee.
Okay, great. Thank you. And if I may, as we were talking earlier on the, Ms. Moore, I believe it is, going to be the contact here in the office and the holiday schedule. So holidays will be observed. There will be no trash services, but I believe it was 6 holidays in here, but I think, are there 8 or 9 that are actually observed by City Hall? Because I didn't see President's Day or January, Martin Luther King birthday. So how does their services on those days, and she's not here at the offices?
The day is only moved back if it's one of the 6 holidays that's listed in your proposals.
Okay, all right. And then, if I may.
Sure. You're on a roll.
No, it's just, I just wanted, I'm sure staff has done excellent deliberations on the company and having conversations and the due diligence I appreciate. Just curious, Mr. Constable, if I may, I don't want to get too informal, George, if that's fine. On, the question was answered already with regard to shifting to 5 days as opposed to the 2 that we historically had within the city. But as I look at your proposal, you have about 12,000 customers you have, and you want to shift to more municipalities and homeowners associations. Your capacity, as you bring on our roughly, based on the counts in the contract and the proposal, about 8,000. As you shift from your single residents, that timeline, do you have the capacity as we bring on this municipality until you start to reduce your single residential contracts?
Yes, and when I set up those routes initially, it was so the capacity to expand as well. Some of the areas that I left lower, I knew of future developments, and I knew that there would be homes added. As far as moving my other operations into Raymore, Raymore's going to be set as almost an entirely separate division. It's going to be our focus. It has its own dedicated number. And I do have the trucks to haul Raymore currently at my shop, but we were going to add brand new trucks for the fleet to work into Raymore and have a different route supervisor than what we provide for in Lee Summit, and have its own unit to try to guarantee success.
Excellent.
And to remind the council, if your question was more also to the global aspect of being able to amp up, there is the period at the beginning of this, which actually Constable Sanitation has proposed that they could probably shorten up. Instead of going 90 days, they could do it quicker to actually amp up to the recycling, to make sure that all of the equipment is in place. And Mr. Constable also included a proposal for what they would be doing during that time period as well.
Excellent, thank you. And then, hopefully this is probably my last, something may pop up that springs another question. On your, I think I read in here also that you use your landfill in Warrensburg, is what I was reading through here, and then I think the recycling was out of the WCA in Harrisonville. But this particular trash service of 5 days in your ramp up, I didn't see any conversation about a transfer station. I don't know if that's even necessary, but what's the plan, or is it needed based on going one a day, if you will, in particular service areas?
Our company could potentially build a transfer station this direction, but we really want our focus to be on starting Raymore at the current time. As far as the other transfer stations in the area, since Lee Summit is closed, they've been overwhelmed with capacity, and honestly, they're closed
so the load
every other day. So we wanted to find dirt for our trash. It has
so there's
a
no
little
need basically to have a transfer station based on the schedule we have.
It is not a must for the schedule or for the pricing.
Okay. And no offense to you, Mr. Constable, it's just the history that we've had. You know, it's kind of been a rough, rocky road for us. So some of the questions that we're asking, that I'm asking, is just to try to, you know, for my own personal edification, that these things are kind of being considered and just kind of working through those things. You have the benefit of learning from those things and put in place a plan to kind of answer those and get ahead of it, which you have done based on what I've seen here tonight and what I've heard. You're definitely stepping off in the right direction. And based on the tenure of your company and shifting into this environment, you're definitely setting a precedent as you start to grow your operation into more municipalities. Based on the success of this, they're probably going to be expecting the same once you move into other areas as you grow and are successful in our community. So thank you for the proposal here tonight.
If I could finish up on that one, sir. From the staff's perspective, when we were looking at as well, and if I'm wrong on this, Mr. Constable, please by all means correct me, but when you just look at Raymore, the universe of Raymore compared to their other work, having the smaller pickup zones where they're not having to get everything in 2 days certainly eliminates the bulk of trash that's having to be transferred to Warrensburg on any one given day. Would it be safe to say that a zone for solid waste could be done with one truck?
Really, two trash, you could do it in one, but the way that I built and routed it, there's a lot of what ifs. You know, you don't wake up and what's on paper might look good, but having the two trucks gives for those instances where extra capacity might be needed on one unit over another.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Constable, I want to thank you for being here tonight in force, answering all of our questions, and the demeanor in which you have conducted yourself in its business with the city and the offerings that you have made and concessions that you have made. I must concur with Councilmember Townsend. This is a major decision that this body of 9 people, representing roughly 22,000 people, must make. There is an old adage that the only possible predictor of future behavior is past behavior. You passed that test with flying colors simply from the documentation that we've received tonight and the answers that we have received from you thus far. But I am compelled as a member of this body to ask you, you are taking on a municipal contract. Your company has never done that before, although you've had great success in everything that you have done. What apprehensions might you have about taking on this contract, or where might you see potential problems? Keeping in mind that those aren't bad things. When Sam Walton was expanding his business at the greatest rate known to man, his family literally thought he was crazy and that he was going bankrupt and driving them into the poorhouse. So it's okay to have apprehensions and see if there are going to be problems where those might be. That is my question to you, sir.
When I first picked up the RFP, my initial fear was the timeline for this project. You're moving it away from one hauler into another, and what you can do during that transition. As that transition day gets closer, we've worked hard to set some items in place, and so far it's been moving in the direction that we feel it should at this current time to have that transition take place and have it be smooth. So initially that was my biggest concern, but as the day gets closer, I get less concerned about it and more concerned with when we're here, how is the terrain going to be different? What is the customer feedback going to be? I'm more scared of failing than anything else.
Fair enough, sir. Thank you.
Shannon?
I'm sorry. I just wanted to make a comment, too. I understand that there's a fear of lack of municipality experience, but George and I both have a business coach that we've been working with that has stepped us out of our current operations a lot so that we can focus on this moving forward, because we know that's where we want to go. Now, we are not all about growth. We are all about profit first. So with that being said, we just want to make sure that you understand that this is a huge contract for us and something that we're going to put a excessive amount of focus on, both of us together, for quite some time until we have that experience with the municipality and that reference from Raymore. We do not intend to continue pushing our growth currently. We want to focus solely on Raymore.
Thank you very much. The piece about the business coach is impressive and telling. There's always something that's not in the paperwork, and that was one of the items that came out. Thank you.
Mr. Circo, you had your hand up.
Oh, I just had one thing. I know I talked to Mr. Fairborn earlier. But I know when we read through these things about the bulky pickup, one item per month on the first given pickup day. But if we should accept this contract, we will start in the middle of July. So the first pickup, the free bulky, will actually be that first week of August, because that's our first day of the month. Even though we're starting in the middle of July, but actually you're talking the first day of the month for those 5 days for those different zones. So I would assume August 5th, 6th, those would be the actual day to put the bulky out. I don't want people putting it out in July and sitting for 2 weeks trying to figure out what happened.
Ms. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to note for anyone that's listening, I went ahead and went to their website while we were sitting here, and they have rates for Blue Springs. It's not the whole municipality. They have rates for Lee Summit. And just for trash alone, those customers, current customers, are paying $7 to $9 less than we are being quoted at this municipal rate. So we are getting a bulk discount, as from what I can see.
Mr. Townsend, did you have something else? No? Sorry, hand waving.
I did. I'm sorry. It did pop back up. Thank you, Shannon, for the comments with regards to, because that was one of my earlier questions, were your growth rate. Again, history being, in my layman's read of our current vendor, I think they tried to grow too fast before the operations were in place. And hearing tonight that you just want to make sure that your functions and operations within this particular municipality are sound, and then refine them and build on it from there. So you don't have any other current RFPs out with any other municipalities to grow. And this wasn't a joint contract as it was in the past, or joint RFP, I should say, as we had in the past. This is a single RFP with one single municipality. So that's encouraging. So again, to Mr. Holman's point as well. So thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Barber?
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to address Mr. Constable directly. I apologize for that, but I was impressed. I had a meeting at City Hall today, and just a couple of general questions with the city manager about this proposal when he introduced me to Taylor Moore. And I have to tell you, I was really blown away by that. And I think you guys, from what I know and seen today, you realize it is a partnership. Our citizens look to us to make the decision, and they expect the trash service here just like they have every other city service. And our cities run pretty good, so they have high expectations. It's interesting. I'm an 82-year-old mother that's lived in the same house for 59 years, and you miss her trash or pick up her trash late, you can have a hole in the street. She doesn't care about that. She cares about her trash. So it's really important, and I think you understand that. And I can see by what you put together and how you talk. I did some little research on you too. And apparently you've been in the trash business for a few years, and your family's been in the trash business for a few years. And it may be all you know is being in the trash business. So by the map you put together and by the redundancy that sounds like you put together, there's a lot of thought in this, and you are taking it very seriously. But, we do have high expectations, very high expectations. And so I'll just leave it at that.
Mr. Berenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to thank Mr. Constable for coming out tonight, and Shannon as well. Very impressed by the effort you put into this. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I know the citizens in this town are going to be watching this very closely, so the expectations will be very, very high. I'm sure there'll be mistakes along the way. My advice would be to communicate with us and the city as much as possible. If and when anything does happen, I think communication is going to be the key to overcoming some of the early bumps in the road. So we look forward to having you. We'll be keeping a close eye on everything, and we wish you the best success. Please keep the lines of communication open with us, and we'll do everything we can to help you as well too if this does go through. Thank you.
Anyone else? Have anything to add before we progress here?
One final item relative to the recommendation section, and I will turn that one over to our General Counsel, Mr. Zur.
Thank you. Simply wanted to chime in on this with regard to the references and experiences that had been submitted by Constable Sanitation. In our other side of our practice, we represent a number of homeowners associations that puts us in contact with a majority of the individual association management companies that have been referenced within their RFP. We have never been called in order to address concerns or issues as it might relate to Constable Sanitation with any of the homes associations that are represented by these individual management groups. So just speaking from experience on my side, we have not had to have any involvement with those, and that represents quite a few homeowners association in and around the metropolitan area.
Thank you.
That concludes staff report tonight, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions of staff? Hearing none, I'd entertain a motion to approve the first reading of Bill 3465.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we approve Bill 3465, award of contract residential waste collection to Constable Sanitation.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
The motion has been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3465. Any further discussion or comments? Ms. Abdelgawad.
I'm not opposed to this. I'm in favor of this, but I just want to share for anyone who's watching, or as other council members mentioned, this is a big decision for us. This is very important to the people in Raymore. We've previously had some issues, and so people are going to be watching closely and very concerned about this. So I just want to encourage anyone watching now or who watches this later to take a look at the contract. It's all, you can find it online on the city website. You can see the contract, you can see the details. There are some little things we didn't talk about tonight, like the hardship. If you can't get your trash can out to the end of your driveway, you can call and let the city know, and they'll pick up your trash can between your house and the curb. Christmas trees, that's always an issue. It's in the contract. They'll pick up Christmas trees in January. So there are little details you might be interested in. Please take a look at the contract. This is only the first reading. We'll look at it again next week. So call your council member if you see any concerns when you look at it online, or if you have questions that weren't addressed. We're all available. Let us know. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Holman.
Not to oversimplify, but the concept of picking up trash is relatively simple. You operate the switch and the cart goes up and dumps it. The two things that are going to deem success in this concept is attitude and collaboration. You have demonstrated both thus far. If you can continue to do that, I believe you will be successful with the city.
Any other comments? Mr. Serco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd like to chime in on Ms. Abdelgawad, too. If everybody's watching this, go on to raymore.com/trash. Read us intensely. If you have questions, again, we have Taylor from Constable here. You can call in and she can give you any answer to these contracts, to what we have on the website. So if you call your council person, call the city, talk to Taylor, because that's why she's here. She has the answers for your company. She represents you well, and that will give a nice closure to people to get any kind of answers they have. But thank you again for coming here tonight and presenting this proposition to us. It's very professional, very business. You've done a lot of work just to even get here for the proposition, from what I've heard, and that's great. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else? If there's no further comments, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 8-0. We'll now move on to public comments. If there's anyone in the public that'd like to address the council on anything at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Seeing no one, I'll move on to Mayor-Council communication. I'll start with Mr. Townsend tonight. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep it short. Again, thank you to the vendors who were here tonight representing the waste collection contract. As Mr.
Holman.
Barber has said earlier, it's beyond the profits, but I believe it's the constable name that you also have behind it. You're trying to make sure it's a success with this contract. You've been in business for a long time that I've seen, I think, from the great-grandfather to your grandfather to your father, now to you, your expansion. So you definitely have the pressure to make sure you're successful, so I can understand the nervousness behind it. So again, good luck to you. Again, it's not definitive yet until the next read and the next vote. But again, wish you all the best. I appreciate what was brought here tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Everyone else really pretty much covered any questions I had this evening or anything to say, but I did want to thank you for coming out this evening. As I was talking with Mr. Fairborn earlier, when you get into situations like this, you have the problem side of it, and then you get into the solution side of it. And we are clearly into the solution side. We have all heard from our residents. Obviously, we want this to go very well. I thought the contract and everything you have in here, both from staff and from you, sir, was very comprehensive. I was very impressed. So quite a few of my questions were answered. Several of my colleagues are probably a little more logistically inclined than I. My particular world is communication, and I think that's where the key is going to come in here, is making sure we're communicating to the residents, you know, their choices, how they make their choices, when their trash is going to be picked up, and when this all begins. And if we can get through all of that, then I think things go very smoothly. So again, I thought what was here was very comprehensive, very good. Now it's just a matter of communicating as we go forward. So thank you for being here this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, this is kind of a note to myself, I guess, out loud for everybody to hear. Sometimes I forget that my main job is I'm a teacher, and I need to realize that there are a lot of times people in our city want to know things and want to have information, and it seems like we have a million ways to communicate things, but I need to remember that I can use my skills as a teacher to reiterate the truth about what's going on with our city. There are a lot of times that one person reads part of something, and I actually emailed the whole document to people and said, hey, start at page 29 and read what this company is saying about themselves. Because that's where I began to be impressed with reading this, was when I got to the part that you all wrote. And because that's not easy for everyone. But I am going to reaffirm my commitment. If you don't understand something, you don't have to live in Ward 2, email me, and I will email you until we figure it out, until you and I are communicating correctly. It's not always easy, but if I don't get that first bit of information from you, what you want to know, then I can't teach you what the real answer is. So I will promise to try to help with that.
Mr. Circo.
Yeah, I guess I got a few things. One, I actually built a business insurance agency from scratch, nothing. Started fresh, one person at a time, and I built that up in 19 years to be a very successful business before I sold it. So I understand your fears. When you're having a business, you're going into directions, a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs, but you're doing a good job. You seem, from your information, from what I've read, you've done a very good job. But so I understand your ups and downs as business owners and moving forward into a vast, more larger dwell with the City of Raymore municipality. So I know it sometimes can be a little scary, but I really thank you for that. You guys are very well versed, very well. Your company's good, like you said, generations of running trash. You understand the job, you understand what you're doing, you're committed, and your communication's the key thing to everything. Always a key to communication. I found that out. Without it, you'll fail. And one other thing, years ago, I carried trash and drove a trash truck for 2 years, and I had to get out sometimes and pick it up and drive myself. So I had 2 years experience doing trash. Trust me, it's an experience.
Mr. Holman?
Thank you, Your Honor. 3 items. One, again, Mr. Constable and your staff, thank you for being here this evening. Thank you for your forthright communication and your demeanor and approach to the contract approach with the city. I think you've done everything right. Please continue to do that. Again, we appreciate it. A thank you to Mr. Fearborn and the mayor for the wisdom in calling the special meeting tonight with the rapidly approaching date of the discontinuation of our current provider. This is needed so that we can get things up and going. It's one of those things that probably gets lost in translation, but it was important to have this meeting tonight so that we can have our second reading. Sonia mentioned it earlier, but we do require a second reading on this, which will probably be next week, so that we can get the contract awarded and start making the transition. So very well done. And then just a third thing, I don't know if any of you have followed the news. There was a Trenton officer that was shot earlier this week. My understanding is she survived, but is struggling to kind of recover from her wounds. So if you would, please keep her and her family in your thoughts, and if you pray, in your prayers. That's all I have, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Barber?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, Mr. Constable, thank you for coming tonight and giving us the presentation, and look forward to working with you. We do have a second read, but hopefully everything goes through, and we won't have to talk about trash anymore. And because frankly, I don't want to have to. So I don't have to buy any more Alka-Seltzer. But on a positive note, as part of our work session, we were under budget on our curb replacement, and were able to do more curbs than we thought we were going to do. And that was super news. We were able to have some money set aside for trail lighting. We're going to have a nice trail lighting system over our new walkway at Hawk Ridge Park, and that's coming on board. So a lot of great things happen. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Abdelgawad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just real quick want to thank the representatives from Constable Sanitation for being here tonight. Already have seen great evidence of the work that you guys do, and hope that that will continue if this is passed next week. I know staff has worked hours and hours and hours and hours on this, so great big thanks to staff for all of your work in getting the bid process started and rolling and interviewing and working out the details as we've chosen this company for the contract. So thanks to staff for all your work. I don't want that to go unnoticed. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Berenson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just echo Councilman Holman's words there to Mr. Constable. Just keep doing what you're doing, sir. Very impressive tonight again. No pressure. There are 22,000 people that'll be watching you very closely, but keep doing what you're doing thus far, and I think we'll have some great success here. Thank you.
And I really don't have anything to add but to thank you and thank the staff. There was a lot of work done before we actually got to this point and actually went out for RFPs. A lot of painstaking work, and I know we had a lot of briefings over the subject, Mr. Fearborn and I, on what direction to go, and I think we're going in the right direction, and I'm excited about that, and I'm glad the council sees the same thing. That's all I have tonight. Do we have any reason to move into executive?
We do not, sir.
Thank you. Then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that we adjourn this session of the Raymore City Council.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I will second.
Motion is made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor? We are adjourned.